Do you know what we should do before we talk to Ben Pyle, who's going to talk to us about net zero and that complete moron, Ed Miliband? Let's have a look at Ed Miliband trying to answer a question, which of course he can't do.
But explicitly, do you believe that China poses a security risk to our energy system?
Of course, there are security risks in relation to China that we've got to be vigilant about.
Specifically with regard to our
well, that's
energy
what.
system?
Yes, I'm saying to you that's why we've got to be very cautious about our energy system.
Okay, so given that acknowledged caution, the sort of topics that Parliament deserves to see the detail on include whether this deal involved commitments not to complain to China about slave labour being used in solar production, supply chains, commitments to maintain reliance on Chinese supply chains.
Do ask me, Mr. Thomas, any questions you like about our relationship to China.
And this is what I'm doing. So why not publish
why
the
don't
text
you
of the deal?
Why don't you, as I say, we're following the practice of the previous government.
But Secretary of State, you've released the text of deals with other countries. Why is China being treated differently?
I'm just explaining to you that we're following the practice of previous governments. But
I'm asking about this government. This government
do ask me, Mr. Thomas, any questions you like.
This government has published the text of deals with other countries. Why not release the text of the deal for China?
As I say, we're following the previous practice.
I'm talking about this government, Secretary of State. You've released it for other countries.
We're following the previous practice, as I said.
Text.
But do ask me any questions about our relationship with China.
So why not release the text?
Well, I think I've explained to you the practices that we're following, and with certain countries, we have certain approaches, and with others we have other approaches.
Okay, so if there's a different approach to China, why is China different?
Well, as I say, just ask me any questions you like
on this. That's what I'm doing.
Topic.
This is the question I would like to ask. So why is China being treated differently?
I've answered the question, Mr. Thomas.
He's answered that quite a few times.
I don't believe he has. He's made reference to the previous government.
Whether you like the answer is another matter, but he has.
This government has a very inconsistent approach, Gemma. They've released the text of deals with other countries, but not with China. There is a two-tier approach, quite evidently. So if the government is going to apply a uniform approach, why does the Secretary of State not release the text of this deal?
We proceed on the basis of on a certain basis with some countries and a different basis with different countries, as has been the practice of previous governments. But honestly, ask me any questions about our relationship with China, and I'll answer them for you.
And that's what I've been doing, but you haven't answered them, Secretary of State.
Well, you obviously don't have any questions actually about the substance. What is your question on the substance, Mr. Thomas?
Substantively, I would like to see the government release the text of this deal, as Parliament deserves to see. Now, the Secretary of State can chuckle and laugh and be evasive around the topic, but it's a serious issue.
I think he's looking even more mad than he normally does there, isn't he? Miliband? What's he on, eh? He's obviously taking something, which obviously we can't mention. Ben Pyle is here, however, who is an independent researcher and writer, net zero skeptic, as if we didn't know. What's going on with Miliband's eyes, by the way?
I think you might be right that he's on drugs. I can see that I've got a very close-up view of myself. I would advise the studio to pull out a bit. That's we've been having gremlins here at Me HQ this morning. I haven't been able to log on using my computer, so I'm holding my phone. Stop it! Don't zoom in. It's distracting. Just leave it out.
All right.
Right. Yeah, I think you've got a point when you say that stop it. It doesn't work. When Miliband may be on some kind of drugs. I think he's spoken a lot about how he was sort of quite traumatized by his 2015 general election failure.
Yeah.
And then and I mean boo-hoo. You know, you wanted to lead the entire country down this net zero road to hell, and then the British public in 2015 said, well, no thanks, mate. And then he scored the second worst general election result for a Labour leader in its whole history. So he then went into therapy, and I think what may have happened is that this therapist is instead of going, yeah, well, maybe you should reflect on your failure and do something else.
Yeah,
that therapist has encouraged in him the view that 40 million voters were wrong and he was right. And now we see this just almost pathological intransigence in him, unable to answer a question that, the public has a right to hear the answer to, probably wants to hear the answer to. And he just sort of, pretends like it's someone asking him an unreasonable question in a pub. Not an elected person asking him a question on behalf of 72 million other people. And you see the same kind of performance on the floor in the House of Commons when he's being interrogated by Claire Coutinho, his opposite. And not that I don't think she was all that much better actually, but she's beginning to understand what kind of mess she's been part of, and her party have been created. And Miliband, when he's answering her, he's got foam spraying out of his mouth. He's like a kind of religious nutter used to get outside tube stations in South London, just sort of shouting and he doesn't know whether he wants to have a go at Claire Coutinho or Richard Tice and Nigel Farage more. It's like they're the demons that he's supposed to be exercising. So it's kind of I think there's definitely a piece missing.
There is.
And I think in a normal political environment, if we had a proper sort of functioning, healthy democracy through all of this, someone like Ed Miliband wouldn't have got where he is, because he didn't come up into politics through the normal process. You've got to go and press the flesh. You've got to stand as a councillor. You've got to have a lot of people behind you. You've got to build your armies apart from anything else. And you've got to prove that you can form a relationship with the public and that they're going to trust you, especially in those kind of constituencies. Instead, he was he was a bit ambivalent about his own career. He says so on that horrible podcast with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. He said he didn't really know whether he wanted to go into, I don't know, I'm going to be a lawyer. I tried working in TV, and then I was like, maybe politics. So this is well into his 30s before he goes into politics. And he said he's a spoiled brat from Primrose Hill. And then he goes and he just gets an office job with a Labour minister, and then he gets nicked, to be in Gordon Brown's cabinet. So then they go, would you like a safe seat? So all the people that have ever, had to go up through the Labour Party, which is supposed to be the sort of working class person's route to power.
Not anymore.
He's just exactly. He's just Red Prince dropped into this seat, and he's got no real connection to the public. And I don't think he's got any connection to anything within his brief, within energy or industry either. And so he's
about it, right? I mean, his main claim to fame, right, is that he started up this company which he's involved with, which he tries to make out as independent of him, which of course it isn't. And I think they're funneling money towards it as well. He set up GB Energy with old Jürgen, the German, who's a complete and utter moron, who doesn't employ anyone, doesn't actually even have an office, right? But apparently he's going to be funneling hundreds of millions of pounds through his company to give to other companies so they can all make money off the taxpayers' expense. And you wouldn't be surprised to see Miliband walking up and down Oxford Street with a sandwich board on him going, the end is nigh, would you?
I wish it was, because then we'd get rid of him, if it was nigh. Yeah. NESO, I think the NESO, the National Energy Systems Operator, that used to be owned by the National Grid, but the government bought it under Ed Miliband as soon as they got elected, and that's the organisation that puts out loads of projections about how the energy system's going to work in 40 or 50, and I think they bought it because I think National Grid said you better buy it because we're not going to take the flak for this. So because this is he now keeps warning us that if we don't do what he tells us to do, we're going to have blackouts and we're not going to have enough electricity to power up the old Audi Quattro or whatever it is. The guy's a maniac. There's a great super chat that just was up there a minute ago. Can we get it back, Pooch? Where somebody said that. He reminds them of Dr. Frankenstein, which is true. After he's gone completely doolally. That's from LTL. Yeah, morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Mad Ed reminds me of Dr. Frankenstein. Love the Heron Coasters. Cheers. Yeah, the trouble is, though, Ben, he is now the guy who is odds on if Starmer walks, which he's bound to do probably by May the 7th or the 8th. He's more than likely to become the next Prime Minister, believe it or not. Yeah, and they're stupid enough to do it as well. They're the they've got. I mean, their best mathematicians in the whole party are Rachel and Ed, and these are the people who've told us that there were bills were going to come down by 150, and the only way that they could make that happen was Ed forcing Rachel to let him take £150 off the taxpayer instead, and then tell everyone that, look, your bills have gone down 150 quid. And so it looks like the Blairites are in absolute disgrace. The far left, in the form of the Corbynites, they've all sloped off. So it looks like it's going to be this soft left faction of the Labour Party, which has always loved Miliband. This sort of insipid, bland. I suppose they're the sort of Tory equivalents of the Wets. The Labour equivalents of the Tory Wets, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're sort of very managerial, very wonkish, very geeky, like Ed, but ultimately just completely with their heads in the clouds, committed to sort of weird ideologies that infect global institutions, which are shared by the likes of millions of ordinary people. And I think that really came out this week. And at the beginning of the week, Ed Miliband, Desnes, said that we're going to have community energy now, and we're going to have £1 billion fund for community energy. So everyone on your street wants to sort of set up a company and have wind turbines or solar panels, or a church might want to do it, or a mosque might want to do it, and there's this £1 billion that's available so that they can subsidize your community energy projects. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? This is a green leap forward. So Ed Miliband's plans for the future of energy is a bit like when Mao said that every village must have a steel furnace. And then what happened? Industry died, and so did tens of millions of people who in famine and worse. So I think he's got no real idea about what the grid will look like in the future, as long as it's green. And so I think he's sort of saying, well, if you get solar panels, and if your community gets a wind farm which it owns, in the same way that those Chinese villages owned their own steelworks, then you might be able to survive high energy prices. So I'm not sure what. I mean, he's sort of grasping at straws at this point to rescue the agenda from its inevitable collapse. And pointing all this out in the background is that other unflushable Tony Blair, who's saying this net zero agenda isn't going to work. Yeah. And it's very tempting to say, look, Tony Blair says net zero isn't going to work. But what's Tony Blair's solution? Well, Tony Blair's solution is to go, well, never mind that all the steelworks that we had left are closing down. Let's buy our steel from China because it's cheaper anyway. And let's buy all the solar panels and stuff from China. And then we'll say, as part of this deal, China, would you mind setting up a few factories and investing a few £billion in here as well? So Tony Blair's solution to net zero failing is to open our economy more to China. Yeah. And God knows what Ed Miliband's deal with China is at the moment, because he won't explain to anyone what he's committed us to.
Well, no, of course he won't answer the question. Ben, listen, good to talk to you. Thank you very much. He's kind of addicted to flying around the world as well. He's currently in California, we think, with Gavin Newsom, sort of mincing about, trying to make out that, they've got the answers to the world's problems. Absolutely incredible.